the Soviet Union, of all European countries for the last 20, 30 years or so, life expectancy had fallen, and whereas everywhere else it was rising, and that people looked older far beyond their age. I mean, people, 40-year-olds looked like 60-year-olds and so forth. And they had terrible health, terrible teeth and all that stuff. I mean, everybody who was driving in the East Bloc could observe things like this. And people had asked me, how do you explain this? And I initially explained that in a small article by pointing out, you know, you have to see the Soviet Union and these former East Bloc countries were also systems that you can correctly classify as slavery, but a specific form of slavery. Slavery has two characteristics. One is you cannot run away. The slave master, they can always capture you. And second, slavery is characterized by the fact that they can assign you to work here or there. So in this sense, the Soviet Union fulfilled the criterion of slavery. So did East Germany. I mean, people who tried to run away, they were shot down, were killed. Similar to the slavery as it existed, let's say, in the United States before 1864. But there was a significant difference between the two types of slavery, the slavery in the Soviet Union and the slavery as it existed in the United States. The difference was, in the United States, the slaves were privately owned. In the Soviet Union, the slaves were public slaves. That is, Gorbachev, Lenin, Stalin, and so forth, they could not rent these people out in the market. They didn't really have to pay a price to acquire the slave and so forth. They could just assign them to whatever tasks they wanted. They could make usufruct, or they had usufruct in these slaves, but not ownership in them. Now, does that make a difference? And I think, yeah, it does make a tremendous difference. If you spend money on your slave, you will not engage in capital consumption. It is very unlikely that you then, for weird reasons, will kill your slave, just as you will not kill your cow or horse for whom you have spent some money. You are actually interested that they have a long life expectancy, because then they work longer for you. You are interested they have offspring, because that gives you small little slaves. If you look, on the other hand, what they did in the Soviet Union with publicly owned slaves, there in peacetime, millions of people were butchered, killed. No private slave owner would ever have engaged in this massive amount of capital destruction. So if the choice would be, you must be a slave, you cannot be a free man, would you rather want to be a privately owned slave a la the American system, or would you want to be a publicly owned slave a la the Soviet Union? I tell you, I would choose to be a private slave. Because it guarantees you a far better life. It might actually give you a long life expectancy, whereas in the Soviet Union you could not even be sure that you've survived the next 10 years.